Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about the 2024 NFL Outlook for Marvin Harrison Jr. based on data. So if you're new to the channel, new to the stuff that I do, you can check out some other things on patreon.com/jcoburn. There's also a glossary of terms in the description as well. But stay tuned until the end of the video where we reveal the overall outlook for Marvin Harrison Jr. in terms of his pre-draft profile, his team analysis, schedule analysis, and his week-by-week matchups to see what obstacles and opportunities await him in 2024. Now, as a reminder to all the people that are watching this video, if this video gets 25 likes, I will continue to do these videos. But I need you guys to do it. So if you like this type of content, if you like Outlook style videos or whatever it is you like the video, comment on the video, share the video, do whatever you want to do to help promote this video so that I can continue to make these videos in the future. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to the setup. So here's the first thing to kind of mention here. Marvin Harrison Jr. was drafted by the Cardinals at pick 4 in this year's draft. Now, if you've seen my other video on Malik Neighbors, you might see some similarities in this video, but the fact of the matter is they both tested in a similar area of production. So the typical expectation for a wide receiver selected at pick 4, which is the average approximate value, is 95.85 out of 100, meaning every single selection at pick 4 typically averaged that score. So they were 95% better than the vast majority of NFL players if they were selected at pick 4. What makes Harrison unique, though, is that he has a high pre-draft profile data score on top of having an elite landing spot. So in terms of that, when you look at his offensive market share scores, he was fantastic. He had a 85 percentile receiving market share score. He had a 91 percentile total offensive market share score and a 95 percentile touchdown score. Now, if you've seen the past videos on Neighbors, the biggest difference between these two is that Marvin Harrison has a much higher touchdown market share production score compared to Neighbors, who did better in terms of receiving market share. So again, a lot of that comes down to usage in college, but it kind of gives you stylistically the differences between these two from a production standpoint. Now, when you get to his efficiency scores, efficiency takes into account things like touchdowns per touch, yards per reception. These areas were also very good for Marvin Harrison Jr. He had a high 80 percentile in terms of his touchdowns per touch, was actually the 90 percentile, and then yards per reception was also in the 80 percentile. So not only was he very productive, but he also was very efficient with the football in his hands, which is a good quality to have when you look at the All-Pro, Pro Bowl, and starter areas at the position. Positives here, exceptionally for him. When you get to wide receiver athleticism scores, so these are his athleticism scores. Now, Harrison Jr. did not really take part in any of the combine or pro day events at all. However, he did post some workout numbers with The Athletic. There was an article in The Athletic about some Marvin Harrison Jr. Potential scores. And on top of that, NFLDraftScout.com also has a projected 40-yard dash for him. So based on that information, I was able to formulate these athleticism scores. Now, these are not confirmed 100%. Again, there was no combine numbers, there was no pro day numbers, but this is sort of what the expectation is based on the numbers that was reported by The Athletic and also by NFLDraftScout.com. And based on these numbers, again, elite level athleticism traits. Even if Marvin Harrison Jr. was a shade lower on this list in terms of athleticism, say his explosion score was in the 70 percentile, his speed was in the 80 percentile, and flexibility was in the 80 percentile, these would still be solid numbers for a Pro Bowl, All-Pro wide receiver. So these are good athleticism traits to have. But again, preface that they're not 100% confirmed. Again, a lot of it is piecing together data from various articles written about him and also based on NFLDraftScout.com's projected 40-yard dashes. Then, of course, we get to adjusted production. Adjusted production takes a look at the production for the level of competition, for the team that he was on, and also for his age. And based on this data, he was fantastic as well. Great age score, great MSA rating, and great pass rating for him. And these are all the numbers that you're looking for at the position. He by far is one of the best testing wide receivers we've seen in a very long time. And it's no surprise that he would be listed where he's at here. Just great numbers all around for him. Next up, let's get to what makes Harrison Jr. the prize. So, we talked a lot about his production data, but what makes him so desirable as a prospect? And this is why. So, based on data, the overall EAV or data profile for Harrison Jr. is 99.78 out of 100. Based on the data work that I've done since the 1969 NFL draft class, wide receivers with a 99 or higher data score taken in the top 10 of the NFL draft are as follows: Calvin Johnson, Rob Moore, Larry Fitzgerald, David Boston, Tim Brown, Amari Cooper, Herman Moore, Wes Chandler, Andre Johnson, Ron Sellers, Michael Crabtree, Sammy Watkins, and Mike Evans. That's a pretty impressive list of wide receivers to be mentioned with, and that just kind of shows you the potential that he has just based on the wide receivers that are most readily near him from the past. But with that list and additional wide receiver information, we can formulate a year one potential based on the current roster. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the Arizona Cardinals roster, the talent that they have there, and then kind of see how other wide receivers from the past tested, like Harrison Jr., to kind of give an idea of what to expect from him in his rookie season. So taking a look at the Cardinals 2023 season, the Cardinals ended 2023 with one of the worst offenses in the NFL. They were below average. They ranked 33.68 out of 100 in terms of their offensive single ranking score, which is from Pro Football Reference. Kyler Murray also had a QBR percentile of 52.14 out of 100. However, Murray is not a quarterback who lacks the ability to put in high quality passing efficiency in the NFL. Taking a look at Kyler Murray's college production data, he's averaged a QBR of 60 percentile out of 100 in his career. His best season was in 2021, where he had a 82.38 percentile QBR score, which is a fantastic number to hit. But then it was followed by inconsistent play and injuries in 2022. And then, of course, 2023, just a lack of offensive weapons, which is not going to be the case this year. He has Marvin Harrison Jr. They added more weapons around him, including the addition of a running back and Trey Benson in the draft. So there's a lot of positives that point to the fact that this is a pretty stable offense, all things considered, especially with a guy like Kyler Murray throwing the football. So there's no scary points here, I guess is the best way to put it with him. Now, when you take a look at the wide receivers who tested like him, so this is the parameter here. So this is wide receivers selected in the top 10 of the NFL draft with a 95 to 99.99 percentile data score. So the data score includes, their production, their athleticism, their adjusted production, their strength of schedule, strength of team. All those factors are what this includes. And based on that data, these are all the wide receivers that tested with Marvin Harrison Jr., along with their year one market share season. So this is basically what the rookie seasons were based on their year one market share. Year two is their second year or sophomore season. Year three is their third year season. And then you'll see QBs here. So this is actually what the QBR of the quarterbacks they had that year based on data. Also adjusted for the era in which they played too. And then, of course, you have OSRS, which is the offensive single ranking score, which is from Pro Football Reference that has year one, year two, and year three as well. So it tells you, what their first year was like, the types of quarterbacks that they had, and then, of course, the overall offensive ranking based on what happened in year one, year two, and year three for these wide receivers here. And based on this information, the biggest thing, and if you've seen the neighbors video, you can kind of fast forward a little bit here, but the basic knowledge I was able to get from this is when you compare wide receiver market share compared to QBR, there really was no correlation there between the talent of the quarterback that the wide receiver has and their ability to have high-end market share production. So there's no relationship between those two things. So as much as people want to say, well, this guy's not going to make it as a rookie because this quarterback is terrible, The data doesn't say that. The data says that there really isn't a relationship between those two variables. It really comes down to the talent of the wide receiver. I know a lot of people want to blame the quarterback or blame the team that they landed on as a reason why they didn't make it as an NFL player, but the data tells a different story, that there isn't much of a correlation there. Now, in terms of year two production, there is a slight correlation. 0.29 is a correlation coefficient for year two, but that's negligible. I mean, that's a slight correlation. It's not in the zero 0.5, zero 0.6, zero 0.7 or higher range for correlation coefficient. So I would say in general, when you look at this data, you simply have to conclude that the QBR really doesn't matter. The type of offense this player goes on doesn't really matter. It really comes up to how well the wide receiver adapts to the NFL, which of course has other variables that probably need more study to kind of figure out what those are. Also, when you look at OSRS, so this takes a look at the offensive as a whole, the overall offense as a whole in terms of talent, not just the quarterback. And again, you see a negative correlation, which is a slight correlation for year one, and then year two and year three also is a negligible correlation. It's like there's really no correlation at all there for a wide receiver. So regardless of the offense that a wide receiver goes to, it has nothing to do with, or there isn't much of a relationship with their ability to produce in the year one as an NFL player, let alone year two or year three. So that's the basic conclusions you can take from this. Now, when you get to what this means overall, just to kind of conclude everything, whether Harrison succeeds in 2024 or not, Kyler Murray will not have a massive play in that respect. It's good that he is a decent quarterback. 60 out of 100. You guys might not like that number, but that's above average. It's above what most quarterbacks do at the NFL level. So it's nice to say that he has an above average quarterback throwing him the football. But again, that doesn't have any relationship between what actually happens year one for these wide receivers. It really comes down to their ability to translate at the next level, which are other variables that we might be looking at now. So, with all that stuff out of the way here, let's take a look at the average market share production. So just a quick little thing before we get into the Arizona Cardinals actual roster. When you take a look at the average market share production for top 10 wide receivers selected in the top 10 with 95 to 99.99 percentile data scores, the year one production was 69 percentile, year two was 73, and then year three was 74.13 out of 100. So not the best, but again, most wide receivers are kind of boomer bust prospects, and that's throughout history. Some of them work, some of them don't. So there's a little bit of hit or miss factors with wide receivers, and again, it really just comes down to, it's not really the offensive system as we just saw. It really comes down to the wide receiver not translating to the NFL in the way that he needs to. So that's another sort of factor to kind of consider here. Now, in terms of the actual offense for the Arizona Cardinals, so this chart right here takes a look at what the starting offense for the Arizona Cardinals is going to look like so far based on data. And the NFL positional AV is what their actual production has been in the NFL. The data grade is the EAV score, which is called expected approximate value score. So that's essentially what their data score was coming out of college, basically their pre-draft score. And then age is also there, as well as EFF, which is their efficiency or advanced NFL efficiency score, which takes a look at some other factors as well. But this is a pretty strong team. When you take a look at it, there's a lot of dark green players here. Kyler Murray has shown to be a very successful NFL starting quarterback. James Conner as well has been pretty solid. Now, Trey Benson, of course, is a rookie there. He might get some snaps, but there's a lot of positives here with that. Michael Wilson has shown to be a solid wide receiver last year that could step in and kind of give some production there. Greg Dortch as well has good production. Trey McBride at tight end. So there are other options to consider here that I think will help Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of succeed as a rookie this year. So not to say that these guys are like going to steal targets from him. It's just that there are other options here. He is more talented than those options. So when you look at the data score from Marvin Harrison Jr., he by far has the best data score amongst this group. So it's pretty clear that he would be the most talented offensive player here. but he still has other options to kind of take some heat away from him, which is a good thing. Taking a look at the team-based data ranks from this data I just showed you, the biggest factors on offense, or the biggest weaknesses, really come down to overall offensive depth. There was some positions there that were a little lacking, especially in terms of interior offensive linemen, as well as the tight end position also lacks depth in terms of the age of the prospect. So Trey McBride is a good tight end, but who do you have behind him? That's the biggest thing that's kind of lowering the grade down. And then at the running back position, it really comes down to the age of course, Connor, who is older now. He's 29 years old. But again, if Trey Benson starts, this will improve this number, but this is definitely something to kind of consider long term. So the Cardinals don't have the strongest offense ever, but they do have a lot of talent, and they have a lot of talent that could pay dividends in the future. So that's a big positive to say overall, is they do have the potential to kind of outproduce these rankings. Now, when you get to the positives for Harrison Jr. in year one, I think the biggest thing is he found himself in an ideal fantasy situation. So I've already mentioned it before, but the Cardinals have plenty of offensive threats other than Marvin Harrison Jr. And of course, the eventual or potential slash eventual emergence of Trey Benson will provide more breathing room for Harrison to develop as a rookie. But the interior offensive line is the only threat to the situation. So they will face a couple of teams in 2024 that have strong interior pass rushers that could hurt the timing and development of routes. So that's the only thing. That's the only concern that I have as an evaluator is, there's a lot of talent on the offense, a lot more weapons, obviously, for Kyler Murray, but the interior offensive line is still weak. It's still a weak spot, and I just don't want it to be a situation where Kyler Murray is constantly leaving the pocket and causing plays to break down, and there is just issues or inconsistent production as a result of that. So that's the only sort of major question mark or issue that I have overall is that aspect. And of course, this takes a look at the schedule for the Cardinals. So what we're looking at here is the offensive data, which is 20, which is the first data rank you can kind of see here, is basically the Arizona Cardinals are 20 out of 32 teams in terms of their overall offensive talent so far. The defense is 3 out of 32. And then the next ranking kind of shows you what the opposing team's offense and defensive ranks are. And then when you look at offense slash defense, that looks at the offense of the Cardinals versus the opposing defense, what the difference is between those ranks. And then defense slash offense takes a look at the defense of the Cardinals uh, versus the opposing offenses. And then the DIFF takes a look at the overall team compared to the rankings to kind of show what advantages they might have this season. And based on data, I would say the Cardinals are going to have kind of a brutal start to the season based on the defenses that they're facing. So when you take a look at the Buffalo Bills, there's going to be a 16-point difference between the Buffalo Bills defense and the Arizona Cardinals offense, which is a little bit of a concern. Then, of course, there's going to be a difference between the Los Angeles Rams. The Detroit Lions also are going to have a pretty strong defense this year with additional secondary help. And then they place, the San Francisco 49ers, the Green Bay Packers. So the start to this season is going to be a little rough. So just be prepared for that this season. It's going to be a little rough. And you might be able to, just thinking for a second here, you might be able to have that rough start be an opportunity to maybe trade for Marvin Harrison Jr. So this is just a little bit of a just thinking a little bit, as those games start to happen. Again, he might do really well in these games. You never know, of course, with rookies. But say he struggles a little bit to start the season. This would be a prime opportunity to go in there and grab him. Because again, he is a rookie after all. There's going to be some acclimation to the NFL that happens here. But just kind of keep that in mind here. But once you leave the Green Bay Packers and go into the rest of the schedule, it's pretty reasonable. For the most part. Maybe the Patriots are a little bit of a scary area there, and the 49ers to end the season. But for the most part, this is a pretty decent schedule once you get out of that first start to the season. So they are going to face some pretty strong defenses from a data perspective, of course, to begin the season. But then it should ease up a little bit and kind of be more so just a regular schedule after that, which should be a good thing to consider. So now that we've looked at the overall schedule for the Arizona Cardinals and Marvin Harrison Jr., let's take a look at the week by week matchups here. So this, of course, is the data scores I showed you before, but this is looking at the defenses that they're going to be facing. Okay, so when you take a look at this, this is the type of defense that I'm a little concerned with the Buffalo Bills uh, and the Arizona Cardinals. Is that front four is nasty for the Bills. You take a look at the production they've been able to put up so far, but the cornerback position does have some weaknesses here. So Christian Benford has not exactly produced like we all expected him to produce. He has another year to kind of improve, of course, but he's somebody that has been exceptional in terms of his efficiency. So his overall ability to prevent high impact plays as a cornerback has been in the 93rd percentile. So his overall starts and production as an NFL player has not really lived up to that expectation yet, but his actual production on the football field in terms of things like percentage of completion percentage allowed and yards allowed and all those types of things have been fantastic for him. So this is going to be a tough outing. It just is what it is. It's going to be a tough outing for the Arizona Cardinals to begin the year, but there could be some advantages here. But this is definitely a game that I think again it's going to be a tough start for the Cardinals and Marvin Harrison Jr. because of the defense they're facing here. Then when you get to week two, you start to see, of course, the Los Angeles Rams. Now the Rams have some interesting pieces on defense. Trey White is a fantastic corner, former Buffalo Bill as well, who is a fantastic producer as well. Darius Williams also has been very productive at that position, and of course the safeties there are also decent. They do have Russ Yeast, who's not been the best safety there. Not to say that I don't know if he's actually going to be the starter there because they did draft some players to maybe get in that position, but he was awful last year. He had an 18 percentile overall uh, rating in terms of his coverage ability. So he's somebody that I think is not going to be the biggest issue, but the cornerbacks are. And then when you look at the interior defensive line, Byron Young had a solid season last year. You add in Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, and remember what I told you about the interior offensive line issues. This could be an area where there are some issues for the Cardinals in this particular game because of the overall data. But I would say there is a potential there for Marvin Harrison Jr. to have a decent game, but I think there is some acclimation where he might struggle a little bit in this particular game. Then, of course, you get to the Detroit Lions, who added a lot of help in terms of the secondary. Tyrion Arnold is going to be the starting cornerback for them, and he's a long cornerback that has great change of direction ability, and he's somebody that I think could do really well against Marvin Harrison Jr. Actually, in terms of his overall data as well. But he's going to be a concern, and of course, the front for the Lions also is pretty nasty with guys like DJ Reader and of course Aiden Hutchinson, who's their primary pass rusher there. So this is going to be another test for Marvin Harrison Jr. and the Arizona Cardinals, and could be a little bit of a struggle game to a certain extent. Then, of course, we get to the Washington Commanders, where there will be the first breath of sigh, if you will, because they don't really have that great of a secondary. When you look at the secondary for the Commanders, the data for the starting cornerbacks is not really there. The safeties as well is not really there, but they have a really good front four. So Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, those are very solid interior defensive linemen. So even though the secondary might struggle in this game, the front four will eat, if you will, and it might not be the best game because of that. So we'll see what happens with it. But I think the interior offensive line issues on the Cardinals, or potential, I should say, based on data, are going to be concerned. But I think this might be the first game where Harrison Jr. might show up a little bit. So, the first two games of the season, I think there might be some struggles there, and then eventually you'll have this game, which will be kind of a reprieve. This could be the first sort of statement game that Marvin Harrison Jr. could have. Then, of course, you get to week 5 with the San Francisco 49ers. Strong front seven, as always for them, and of course the cornerback group is also fantastic as well. The weak spot would be Renardo Green, who's a rookie for them, and Brown at safety. But the most of this team is pretty solid from a defensive perspective. So this is going to be a game that is going to be a real test for them, and I think it might be a game where he might kind of struggle a little bit, but we'll kind of see what happens there. Then of course you get to week 6. This is where they play the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers secondary is just fantastic. It's a great secondary there, and they have a great front four as well. There are some weaknesses in terms of individual prospects there, like Rashawn Gary, Devontae Wyatt, and TJ Slayton haven't really lived up to their potential, but the secondary is great, and there's a lot of really good potential there with that. So this is going to be a game where I think it might be a little hit or miss as well for Harrison Jr. and the Cardinals, which might not produce the best against them. Then, of course, we get to the Chargers matchup here. The secondary is all game, and then the interior defensive line for the Chargers is not there. So this could be one of those games that actually is a good start game. So I would definitely consider starting him in this game because there is that potential, and he could have a statement game here in terms of him as a rookie versus a struggling game. Then we get to week 8 with the Miami Dolphins. They have a strong secondary, but older in terms of Jordan Poyer, Jalen Ramsey. Javon Holland has also been solid. The nickel back, though, and Cade Air is not the best. Again, this isn't a final depth chart. That'll come more so once preseason's over. But this is kind of what you're looking at in terms of the secondary. And the interior defensive line, there's some weaknesses there, but Bradley Chubb is solid. Zach Zeeler is solid. Jalen Phillips is solid. All those players are really good. And this could be a game where they might struggle a little bit against them, but we'll see. That's definitely going to be something to kind of consider. Of course, you get to week 9 with the Chicago Bears. Now, the Bears have a great secondary with a not so great defensive line. So this could be a situation where there's more time afforded for Harrison Jr. so he can win a lot of matchups here. So I'm very excited to see what happens here with this game. You have a rookie in, of course, Caleb Williams. So this is going to be a good test, an interesting game for these two, because Kyler Murray, of course, had a similar offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. So there is that sort of connection there in terms of them. But in terms of the defensive situation here, some concerns, but not too many. I think this might be kind of a tough test, but definitely something I think he can handle. Then, of course, we get to the New York Jets in terms of their defense. The secondary for them is not the best in terms of the nickelback and the right cornerback in DJ Reed. But when you take a look at the overall defense in terms of the linebackers, of course, Sauce Gardner. So this is going to be a big test because of the pass rush and because of the secondary in terms of individual pieces here is going to be a test. But this is definitely something to kind of monitor and see what happens. But this might be a game that you might want to sit him, considering what happens here, and especially how well he does up to this game, because he's going to play a lot of tough tests this year. And then, of course, we get to week 12 with the Seattle Seahawks. Based on data, their secondary has some holes. Rashawn Jenkins is definitely a hole. Julian Love. Michael Jackson at cornerback also is a bit of a hole there. And then in terms of the front four, also some issues there as well. So this could be a game where there's some levity there. I think there could be some opportunities that could be taken advantage of in this game from a data perspective. Then, of course, we get to the Minnesota Vikings. They have a lot of issues in terms of their front four now, with a lot of guys that have left. And then, of course, the cornerback position is not the best. And Harrison Smith Jr. Harrison Smith, I should say, is 35 years old. So even though he's played well in the past, I don't think that's going to be the result this time. So this is definitely going to be one of those games that could be a blowout game. It really potentially could be that, because the overall defense for this team is not the best for the Vikings. And of course, we get the Seattle Seahawks again. Again, a game that I think is fairly evenly matched in many respects, but they could take advantage of some cornerbacks here and there and some safety play to kind of have a big game. Then we get to the Patriots. The Patriots, in terms of their data, is a little undecided. I think there's going to be a lot of players on this list that are not starting once the season actually starts because there's some inconsistencies here. But Christian Gonzalez, of course, was a solid cornerback option, which has shown flashes from last year that could be some trouble in this game. And I think in terms of the front four, there's some things that are kind of undecided, but definitely the talent is there to kind of take this team to in terms of possibly being a top 10 defense this year. But we'll see what happens. But this is definitely a game that could be have some things taken advantage of, but also could be really great at this time of year, especially in Week 15. Then, of course, we get to the Carolina Panthers. This team has a lot of really old players that are not the best from a production standpoint. I think in terms of the front four, there are some positives there, but when you look at the secondary for them, not exactly what you're looking for there. So this is going to be something where I think there are some issues here when you take a look at the overall data here for the Panthers here. And then, of course, you get to Week 17 with the LA Rams. Again, I think the secondary has some holes, but also the front four could be pretty nasty with some new additions there. So we'll see what happens, but I think this is sort of a 50-50 type of game. And then, of course, you get to the last game of the season, which is San Francisco 49ers, which are always a tough matchup. And I think this could be another game where it might be a little hit or miss. Maybe if they, bench some players, if the 49ers end up at the playoffs, this could be a game where there are some interesting things that happen as a result of that. The overall outlook. So when you take a look at this chart right here from Marvin Harrison Jr., this is all of the wide receivers who had a similar situation, in terms of the quarterback situation and also in terms of the offensive situation for him. And these are all the wide receivers who kind of tested with Harrison Jr. based on those parameters. So that's kind of what should be maybe expected from him. There's a lot to consider with Harrison Jr., but I believe ultimately that he'll have a successful rookie campaign. Harrison Jr. is facing a tougher schedule than most rookie wide receivers typically face. So there will be opportunities for massive statement games, as I showed you, with like the Washington Commanders, for example. But his floor is sort of the 51 percentile area, with a ceiling being in the 91 percentile. The ultimate ceiling for a year one top 10 wide receiver is in like the 98 percentile area. But I think it's a feat he could reach as well due to his data score. But I think overall, you should be kind of looking at a guy that could do really well this season, but also could face some challenges. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think he's kind of put up or shut up. You're picked as the best wide receiver in this draft class, and you're going to face one of the tougher defensive schedules, and this is your time to show it. So I'm excited to see what happens. There's a lot of competition here to kind of see, but this is a pretty decent year to kind of figure out what you got here in terms of Marvin Harrison Jr. So overall, I want to know in the comment section below, what do you believe Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to end up doing this year? Are you kind of optimistic like me, where I see a lot of struggles, but I also see some statement games, or are you in the camp that maybe he might struggle mightily, and a lot of people might have some second guesses about him? And you might be able to take advantage of that, in terms of, getting a trade here or there to get him if he struggles in year one. But overall, that was the data for Marvin Harrison Jr. Again, if this video gets 25 likes, I'm going to do another video on, say, Roma Dunze, or any of the other rookie wide receivers. If you just put them in the comment section below of kind of who you want, you can do that. But thank you guys so much for watching. Check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn. Also, check out my X, formerly known as Twitter account, at Geometrics, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.